shouldn't be blue. I want it to be true. Don't want to be trapped on doing what I should. Don't want to work all day, always dressed in gray. Responsibilities until it is too.
Hi, this is Deborah Danielson with the Rebel Podcast. I'm so excited to tell you today that we've gotten a lot of feedback from the audience, and you guys wanted to have us take a little watch of the latest Teen Mom Next Chapter. So we're going to do an episode review of Teen Mom Next Chapter today. There's going to be a two-part on this one because we had a lot to talk about. First of all, it's very challenging because it brought back a lot of memories for me. But on the other hand, I just want to say MTV has done a magnificent job of documenting life in America for American families and the struggles we go through, unplanned teen pregnancy. But as the children are growing up, as the families are evolving and adapting and changing, MTV is the only network that I know that has followed that story for so long. And I do know that the format has changed, and we now have something where we have 9 girls that we're following. You know, we kind of struggled when we watched this episode because the original episode watched, you know, between 5 to 6 girls. And now we're looking at 9 girls and their stories. And it's not a weekly, consistent, kind of like soap opera format storytelling, but it's more almost like, let's take a quick look in here and see what's going on. And it almost feels more like, where are they now kind of thing. Hope you enjoy this episode. It'll be 2-part. So now let's watch part 1 of Teen Mom Next Chapter as we do the episodic review. Well, I am so glad today that I get to talk to you out there in beautiful Palm Springs, California, living life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful February day here. It's so like sunny and warm.
Yes.
Not to rub it in.
And this morning, it's gray. It's overcast in Iowa, and I think maybe it's 25.
It's in the 60s here right now. And it's like one of those days, to me it feels like one of those days in Iowa or Nebraska where it's like at the very beginning of like the, great weather of spring, like where it's just like
whenever I see a hummingbird, I'm like, oh my gosh, first of all, they're so cute, beautiful colors, but they always look happy, don't they?
They do. And they're kind of tame in a way too, because they'll come up to, like when I'm doing dishes, they'll come to the window over my sink and just sort of hover there and say hi and then, fly away again. Yeah.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, this week we decided that we were going to watch Teen Mom Next Chapter. And we've had an audience requesting that and wanting to know, Deborah, what do you think? What's the behind the scenes? There's questions that I've received from people. But I think the other big thing is you encouraged me to look at it, watch it. And it's been a very hard journey for me, just to be honest. First of all, I've loved doing the show. And I considered all those girls and their family. We all became a family. We spent well over a decade together. And we here's MTV making history all the way, right? Listen, they are still making history, and I am so proud of all the producers and all of the people that participate in this, because nowhere in history has a network documented the life of somebody being born and following that family dynamic all the way through, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what's so interesting, especially with this season, because they're all of the children are turning 16 or have turned 16.
And I think the phenomenal message here is based upon what you went through growing up and watching your parents and watching the pain, listening to the fights, the arguments, the custody battles, and the internal family dynamics, the falling out in the family. How did it affect these children? How did it change their life? And how did it change the way they view the world?
One of the surprising things for me, because I know Macy and Ryan, they had kind of a ugly relationship, partly because he was, had addiction issues or whatever. Um, but Bentley seems to be pretty well adjusted and like a pretty good kid, There wasn't really any conflict with him. He just seemed like a really easygoing, well-behaved kid. So
So
you would
let's
think that some,
let's start right there because that is absolutely to me the biggest memo of the episode we watched this week, where Macy and Tyler and or Taylor and Ryan
right.
and all of his latest baby mama there got
Yeah.
together, healed some wounds, and they're like co-parenting to try to be good to Bentley. And now Bentley's turning 16, right? So here we go. I looked at Bentley. Now remember, I saw Bentley as a baby. I held Bentley. I watched Bentley and Sophia play, in the studio and behind the scenes while we were filming. And then I watched Bentley when he was like maybe 3, and he had a little crush on Farah when he was a little boy.
Oh,
Oh yeah, he was so cute. And then I was sitting there watching Bentley, looking at, his style, his hair, his dress, his attitude. It's remarkably wonderful. And
yeah.
don't you think it's just like way cool the way he is?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think a lot of it has to do with how, well, because you can tell when they went to go, not to spoil anything for anybody, but when they went to go buy him his first car, the parents just all worked together, and there was no conflict. It was just they even met for lunch beforehand.
Mhm.
Um, it was just sort of a modern family, two
Right.
two families coming together and just for the sake of the child and putting any crap behind them and uh, just focusing on what's best for Bentley, which I think thought was really amazing.
I do too. And it just really underscores how we can make really important choices in life that direct the quality of our life.
Well, and I thought was what was interesting too is that you could have, in reality TV, I'm sure if you've been on reality TV for a while, there's kind of an impulse to sort of make some drama out of some situation. So both Macy and Ryan could have played it up for the cameras or something like that, but they just focused on what was best for their child, which I thought was really admirable. Instead of focusing on being you know extra and having a drumming up some conflict about it.
But here's the special nugget that I took away from this segment. So when we were filming, we started out with 6 girls, then we went down to 5. And then pretty soon it just became pretty much 4 major stories. And the thing about Macy is that if you look at Macy at 16 and pregnant, and then you look at Bentley at 16, not pregnant, not not in a major relationship, looking and
Yeah,
analyzing. I mean, Bentley is sitting back here and he's looking at the whole thing and he's analyzing it and he's acting like a responsible young adult.
right.
Macy, on the other hand, if we go back to and look at any of those old footages, Macy's out partying, she's out having a good time, they're drinking, they're having relationships, and they're not thinking about what are the consequences if I have unprotected sex. And that was
Yeah,
the
was it
point in the first Teen Mom or 16 and Pregnant, not to have unprotected sex.
yeah, I think there's more of a focus. I think in general on in parenting, there's more of a focus of the decisions that you make kind of cause and effect.
Mhm.
I've noticed that a lot. Not to go completely off course in this conversation, but like with my sister and her kids, more so than when I was, the way my parents raised us, it's more like if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. So, weigh the pros and cons of that. Which decision do you want to make? Do you want to go in this direction or this direction? And it seems like that's kind of how they've raised Bentley, which is, make good decisions, basically. Just don't go with impulsive decision making.
Yes, or just hormonal decision making.
Yeah, whatever feels good right now, just do it.
Let's just go for it. And
Yeah,
I really admire, that whole group, Sophia and Bentley and all of these children that were born on TV from Teen Mom or 16 and Pregnant. And now they've reached that, that magic number 16, right? It's like they're coming of age, they're coming into their own, they're going to drive a car now. They're going to be out there in the world. They're going to be young adults. And every single one of these children, to me, have learned immensely from watching their parents and making choices for their own lives to be better.
yeah. Can you imagine being? I kind of feel bad a little bit for their parents, just because. Can you imagine having, all of your experiences from like 16 and up on film, where where your child can go back and watch that and say, "This is what you were doing at my age, so
Yeah,
don't scold me for doing that, doing the same
yeah,
thing."
yes. I think to me, I have a DVD of every single episode we did. And to me, it's a treasure because I haven't been able to talk to Sophia in 3.5 years, and it's breaking my heart. If there comes a day when we can get back together, if there's any question in her mind, we have a film, we have the DVD, we have actually things that occurred, and there's no secondhand memory. There's no, how you kind of change things over time in your mind and that you make it into something that it really wasn't. So
Right.
there's none of that when you have the real video and you have the real photographs. There's none of that. There's no finger pointing. It is what it is.
Yeah, you kind of have the best home movies ever,
And I,
professionally produced home movies.
yes, and I'm very, very grateful. I think MTV should be awarded some kind of like a lifetime achievement award or something because they've taken and documented the American family at a time in history that has been so evolving and changing rapidly with technology and the things that enables. So when you look at the fact that Bentley is getting a beautiful Jeep pickup truck, something that a lot of people go to work every day and dream about being able to afford. That's another thing where I've heard a lot of people criticize. I listened to Macy talk throughout the thing saying, but Bentley's a good kid. And he is a good kid. And, I equate that to Sophia. She's a very good kid. And I will tell you that these children being on TV, going to school in a regular setting, don't have an easy life because they have parents and their schoolmates that talk to these children that they go to school with. And the parents are putting their 2 cents into these children. And that's prejudiced, and could be any kind of, it could be good or bad, right? And
Right.
I just know that when Farah sent Sophia to public school, I was over there and I was talking to the principal and I was making sure that the principal understood what was happening, why it was happening, and that that was not healthy for anybody in the classroom, the teacher, the children, or Sophia, and especially Sophia, because she didn't need children making fun of her because she was trying to wear a little bit of her mom's makeup while her mom was out of town, and that was comforting to her. And that's something that she wanted to do. What does it hurt to put on a little bit of a little bit of rouge, maybe a little bit of eye lash stuff, mascara, right? That doesn't make anybody bad.
Yeah. Well, it's probably, I mean, she already had a spotlight on her being in class, and then, you know, anything different that you do outside of the norm when you have a spotlight on you, people just
Yes,
are ready to pounce, you know.
they are. And that's the other thing that I noticed. These children from the show, the Bentleys, the Sophias, the Leahs, all of them, right? They really aren't out looking for the spotlight. They're more reserved, they're hanging back. They understand more about the spotlight and what it brings with it, the good and the bad. And they're not so apt to jump up there and want to show off, and they don't want to make drama, like you pointed out. So now they're following 9 girls. It's just a snippet here and there of when they have something interesting to share. Next week, it's going to be Amber, and Amber was, they were showing previews about Amber asking someone to bring a home pregnancy test to her. What do you think about that? Here's somebody who's been up and down and all around, baby daddies, children, and then children taken away from her now at the age in the mid-30s. She's asking someone to bring her a home pregnancy test. So the children almost are becoming parents to some of these parents because the children are exhibiting very good judgment, and some of the parents who had struggles are still struggling.
It's sad to see that still continuing. It's been so, this was 16, 17 years ago that the show started, and it seems like she's changed somewhat. Maybe she's, kicked her addiction issues and things, but it seems like some of the personality issues are still there.
Yeah, and there's struggles, and I'm glad that she's brave enough to share them and fight,
Right.
and I'm proud of her for that. So for MTV, I think to go in a realm of telling a complete story, I think they left off the fractured family part. When I'm standing in the airport every day, being a TSO officer, I'm talking to many, many of our fans. And the number one thing a lot of these fans have on their mind is their fractured families. Oh, I can relate to what you're going through, Deborah, because I haven't talked to my daughter. I haven't talked to my son. I can't see my grandchildren. And that story, although we see the beginnings of it and we see, MTV has documented a lot of that, we don't see the onward focus of it. It's like at a certain point, MTV just cut it off, boom. We're only going to deal with this certain age group, and we're not going to talk about the grandparents. We're not going to talk about the fractured families, and we're just not going to share that story. But I think that's really critical to children. So like Sophia, for example, or like Leah, or like Carly, when certain people are cut out of their lives, it changes their story. And it will change how they grow up, and it will change how they have their families. And I just feel like this fractured family concept could be told in a really compelling way. And maybe just like the Teen Mom Next Chapter, they could show like where are they today or what's the fractured family situation now or something like that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like it's something that is it's so prevalent now for some reason. Because I mean, I've been in places with you where people have come up to you and said that, I don't get to see my grandchildren. What do you call it? Like TikTok therapists, sort of,
Yes.
that are basically like if you don't like something, just cut it off if it doesn't serve you, or whatever. And it's taught people to just not deal with things that they don't, not deal with any disagreements with people they have or things like that. You just cut it off. And um people are cutting off you know, whole whole parts of their family or their entire family.
Whole
And it's really
generation.
sad, like in your situation where you don't get to see your grandchild, and she doesn't get to know you as, she goes through her teen years and on. It's really sad.
And it hurts a lot of people. It's not just me that it hurts, and it's not just Sophia that it hurts, but it hurts people that haven't even been born yet because it makes a certain thought process take place where, yeah, just cut off a whole generation. Just what that's not useful. What do I need that person for? Or if you have people in a fractured family that have been ghosted or gaslighting or, where
Yeah.
the truth isn't coming out or the truth isn't shared because there's maybe a disability in the family.
It's
And
just one, or it becomes just one-sided
yeah,
and skewed.
yes. And I really feel like, at least growing up when I was a child, my dad's mother, three children, and my dad was the middle child. And so basically, the oldest daughter and the youngest daughter hated their mother. And I grew up listening to one of them say, "I'm going to dance on your grave when you die, you old lady." And I'm like, what? It's
Wow.
all of that. So my grandma lived to be 100. And so you sit there and you listen to that and you see all of the good things my grandmother did to help each one of these children. And when they didn't have jobs and they needed food and so on and so forth, she was there giving everything she could give to help support these people. But yet they just for a long time cut her off and then they would show back up when they needed something. And I just think a lot of different scenarios play out in families. I loved my grandmother dearly, and I was fortunate because my dad let me have a relationship with her, and my dad loved her dearly. So I learned and I watched, and I know that she never said a bad word about these children ever. She loved them till the day she died, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch. And I just really think that if MTV could capture kind of the rest of the story there, I think they have a documentary that just kicks ass. I mean, they just have done a phenomenal job of setting a new tone for the whole world where people can share the struggle of unwanted teen pregnancy, the struggles of domestic violence, and the struggles in mental health, and then how that affects a whole generation and decisions that they're making and how they're transforming.
The entire family,
Yeah,
how it affects. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting.
yeah, it's very,
Um,
I mean, they're three-quarters of the way there already. And I think they're doing
yeah,
a great job. The only concern I had too with the show was I thought it was well done. And I thought that they had brought good storytelling to the table with this Teen Mom Next Chapter. Did you feel that way too?
I did. It was a little for me, I'd kind of only really watched the original seasons that, like that you were on. So some of the new people that were from I think from Teen Mom 2 that were on it, because they kind of combined
Yes.
every cast. Those people I wasn't really familiar with. Like I was saying about the twins. the struggle with the one daughter and her disability. I think she has MD,
Yes.
and her, kind of asserting her independence. I don't want to go through the handicap door. I don't want to have, I don't want to take my wheelchair everywhere I go, and things like that. I think that's something that I don't know if I've ever seen on TV before, where you're, following a girl with physical disabilities who, is trying to assert her independence as a teenager. It's really interesting. Um,
And and I
but
loved that segment. I thought that segment was extraordinary. And I thought Leah was vulnerable and honest about how it hurt her to see her daughter hurt.
yeah,
And I just loved how they did that. I thought that that was filmed and captured in a very sensitive, powerful way.
I thought so too, because you really saw both sides. Because the Leah was very emotional in that she couldn't protect her from everything, and she was so worried that if something happened to her, she wasn't going to be there, and that she wouldn't be able to help her.
When you're young like that, you don't really see how your parents feel or think. But both sides, the daughter and Leah, they both had legitimate concerns.
Yeah, I just thought it was really cool. It was just interesting to see that documented. I don't think I've ever seen, a situation like that documented on TV before.
Was that Leah pulled the car over, and who did she talk to? Who did she share her most innermost feelings with? Was her producer. Those relationships are powerful. And where I struggle is I miss all of those people. I miss
Mm.
the producers. I miss the family that we created behind the camera is every bit as powerful and even more so than most people real family. So the fact that Leah has that much of a good relationship and I guess family with her producer in MTV, that's a very powerful story. We did break the fourth wall, and it was with Heather Walsh. Thank you for watching part 1 of the Teen Mom Next Chapter